What is up, everybody? It's the Vish Kumaran show. I'm Vish Kumaran, and I'm joined by the radio legend, and now the new, probably YouTube legend. Are you working towards that? Can we give you that title yet? Larry Krueger, what's up?
No legendary status at all here, but but I'm happy to be here and talking with you. What's going on, man? How are you? How's your day? How you
No,
feeling?
it's been cool. We had to shift our usual Tuesday night stream. Usually you and I are known for being those two guys, um, apart in age, but I guess not on the same wavelength of just talking about football for a couple hours on random Tuesdays in the off season. And then all of a sudden I got a little bit sick yesterday. So now here we are on a Wednesday night. Does it feel the same to you?
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's all bleeding together right now, but man, I'm fired up. We always have good streams, man. No question.
What number stream is this for you today?
Number two. I was on with Wayne. I had Wayne Breezy.
A light day for you, huh? A light day.
I'm going to do a third one tonight with Damon Bruce when we're done.
Oh, okay.
So we'll do that. But yeah, now we just got to figure out how we going to double back with you on my channel. We're going to have to figure that out because I don't know.
Tomorrow, right?
I don't know if we can go back to back. We'll have to figure it out. If you don't want to go tomorrow, that's cool.
I'm ready to go tomorrow. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see what the topics show up. But I'm always ready to go. Yeah, but it is interesting going back to back. You're not wrong about that. We'll have to work that out. Yeah.
And I saw you the other day. You were doing a stream with somebody. I forget. I didn't even know who that was. It was kind of a younger guy who was delighted to have Vish Kumaran on his show. I didn't see who it was, but I did see it for a minute or two.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So one of my buddies, he started a podcast and he had me go on, and it was kind of cool because it was the first time I've been on in a podcast setting and talked about anything besides football or 49ers. We talked about some of the processes of going through, doing this amidst the pandemic and all of that. So it was really, really fun to talk about that. It's the To Some Extent podcast. You can look up To Some Extent on YouTube if you want to go see what I have to say about that. I don't think I mentioned Larry Krueger in the podcast, but if I did, I think a lot of you would go click on it. So let's just say I mentioned Larry Krueger in the podcast.
There you go. So what are we talking about, man? Now that we're over here on your channel, you're leading. You're the lead dog. You're the tone setter. You're the question asker.
Yeah. So, and I kind of envy the creativity of like a Grant per se when he's in that role, right? Because Grant is able to turn anything and everything into being interesting to talk about. Luckily, Craig Carton bailed me out this week by just throwing it on randomly. Famous radio host. I didn't even know who he was until this week. I should have known who he was. He's pretty famous. That, Aaron Rodgers to the 49ers could be a possibility. And this idea that, the Niners could come in, and there's not been movement, right? Rodgers said he's going to the Jets. The Jets have said they're getting Rodgers. Zach Wilson's their number 2 quarterback. Very, very weird way to talk about a guy who was the number 2 overall pick just 2 years ago. But we're not here to talk about the Jets. But there's not really been movement in that front. And now all of a sudden he throws out this possibility. And we do know around draft time 2 years ago, before the 49ers drafted Trey Lance, they did make on that Wednesday before the Thursday draft an inquiry call to try and trade for Aaron Rodgers. Now, they got no movement on that front. According to Mike Silver, that hurt the relationship between, guys that otherwise have been presented to us as very, very good friends in Matt LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan. Since then, I don't know the status of their relationship. We'll have to ask Mike Silver to report on that again. But we do know the Niners have been interested in Rodgers in the past. There's some rumors that I have heard. I don't know about you, Larry, that Rodgers is Shanahan's, like he thinks he's the best quarterback ever. Like that's his ideal quarterback. I don't know the veracity of that, but that's just what people say. So now that Craig Carton has thrown out this bombshell, I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and there's going to be 2 discussion points. And I think we're going to disagree on both. The first one is, do you think the 49ers should make a move for Aaron Rodgers if it's a possibility? And then the second thing is, let's pretend it's a possibility. Do you think they will?
Well, it's really about this year because the Niners are set up for the quarterback spot going into the future, but they may not be set up for this year. As far as they're trying to win the Super Bowl this year, they should. I mean, look at the NFC. If the Niners are a punt on going for the Super Bowl this year, I mean, that's just the dumbest thing times 100. There's nobody good in the NFC. Philly is probably the best team. After that, it just falls off the floor. The next team is, light years behind. So behind the Niners and the Eagles, in my opinion. So you can't give away this year, but you don't, you know, you don't know if Brock Purdy's going to be healthy. The one thing the Niners probably know more about Brock's health than we know, but even they probably don't know definitively about him, and we don't know how they feel about Trey. And they may feel like Trey is at this point. I mean, like, there's a lot of people that feel like something's really changed with the 49ers and Trey, that they may have a different viewpoint. I don't think that that's true. I just think that what's clear is that he's a long range play, and you don't know what you're going to get this year. And do I like him in the future? I do. But do they? I don't know. But what I think we both would be in agreement is he's probably not going to fulfill his potential this year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he will.
Yeah.
But it seems like if you were questioning Trey's what he's going to do for you this year and thought
Mhm.
more deferred gratification, and if you're questioning the health of Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers, Vish, makes so much sense because you cannot give this year away. And when at first I'd be like, well, it doesn't make any sense because it doesn't make sense money wise and it doesn't make sense compensation wise.
Right.
Now I'm looking at into the details of it, and neither the compensation nor the salary seems daunting. Rodgers is due to make 15 million. They can clear 15 million. And
Right.
um at the same time, the compensation I would think would be multiple high picks, but from what I'm hearing, it might be just one day 2 pick and a conditional pick. Not the Niners may be willing to do that. So, it sounds like the price tag might be right. It sounds like the cap hit might be right. And so I think they're a player. I don't doubt it. And it to me, I wouldn't be in favor of Rodgers, but if they don't believe in it's really about are they worried about when Brock's going to return? Are they worried that this year could be a total loss for them as far as Brock? And are they worried that Trey in their mind isn't going to be ready this year and they're going to wind up giving away this year and giving away another year because of the quarterback position? I don't think they're in the the mind to do that. And I think they would even extend on the cap and extend in a trade to a logical extent
Mhm.
for a guy like Rodgers. So I think it's we can all sit here and be like, ah, man, I'm so tired. What's really lame are people who are sitting here. I'm bemoaning quarterback rumors like it's like some god awful thing. You're a 49er content creator, and there's rumors out there, and you're going to sit there and write articles and talk about how all these rumors and it's like you're so weak. If you're one of these people complaining about rumors, that there's too many rumors and I mean, how weak are you? So
Wow.
I mean, that's how I feel about it. I mean, you're a Niner content creator. Why would you not want things to talk about? And I understand it if you think it's all bogus, but this one adds up. This one makes sense. There's logical reasons they should want Aaron Rodgers. There's logical reasons why Rodgers may be their best option. So it makes sense to me. It really does. I don't know. We haven't talked, so I have no idea what your opinion is on this, but my first blush would be like, no, man, go young, stay with Purdy, stay with Lance, stay with Darnold, keep the young, cheap quarterback room and go forward. But if the Niners don't believe in Trey and they don't believe in the health of Brock, then Rodgers makes perfect sense.
So my thoughts on it are I'm so sick of these 49ers quarterback rumors. They're not realistic. No, I'm messing with you. I actually think you summed up all the talking points there like very, very beautifully. Um, I think the biggest, I guess, first from the 49ers side, the biggest thing that wouldn't make sense is just that they've given us so much messaging about the importance of the rookie quarterback contract, right? And they're about to make Nick Bosa the highest paid, what we estimate to be the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. That one, I wouldn't understand how anyone would argue that Nick Bosa getting such a contract. And so even with the numbers not necessarily being so bad with Rodgers, Larry, there's the rest of his contract then you would have to add on. And so that's when things would maybe get a little bit more tricky, but you do pay Parag Marathe a lot of money to handle these type of situations if you're Jed York. So why not take the chance? Because if we're talking about the player, and I know Aaron Rodgers' season is a little bit complicated, being sick actually allowed me to watch a lot of Aaron Rodgers over the last 2 days in 2022. And I actually think if you get to the end of the season, Larry, and there was the mid part where he wasn't playing as well, I think that was due to his injury. If you get to the end of the season, obviously the loss to Detroit puts a negative impression on the overall season of Rodgers, given that was a week 17 loss or week 18 loss, excuse me. He actually played like an MVP level player down the stretch of the season, especially once Watson got going. He was back to being Aaron Rodgers, which is still, a top 6-7 quarterback in the NFL. And you would think you put that kind of player on the 49ers with the talent they had, like you're right? Only the Eagles have talent in the same conversation as the 49ers in the NFC. You would think, okay, immediately the 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl. They're Super Bowl favorites, right? So for me, from the player's standpoint, Larry, especially if we're looking at just 2024, you have an out on Rodgers contract at the end of 2024, which can save you $16 million. Now you would have to eat $24 million of dead cap. But if you win the Super Bowl, it's not the worst thing. Perhaps Rodgers just retires after winning the Super Bowl. So that could be a possibility. Like there is ways to make it work in 2024, and it solves your problem of they clearly do not want to develop Trey Lance for 1 year in 2023. If Trey Lance starts in 2023, Larry, it's because they think he's giving them the best chance to win now. If I think they feel Darnold gives them a better chance to win now, I think some of their messaging in the owners meeting made it clear, Larry, that they're not going to just make Darnold take a back seat and make him a hedge because they want to develop Trey Lance. They're not going to do that. If Darnold's playing better, they feel Darnold gives them the better chance to win, they're going to play Darnold until whenever Purdy comes back. I don't know if you agree or disagree. Your face is...
No, I do agree.
Okay. So we're on the same page with that. And so because they look at it like that, and then the other fear is, right, when does Brock Purdy come back? He's going to come back without the entire offseason. He's rehabbing a very serious injury. Is it fair now all of a sudden having Rodgers, right, allows you to go in a different direction and then go back to Brock Purdy in 2024 if you believe that much in him, and they seem to believe that much in him. So from all those standpoints, it makes sense. If we're talking from should they do it, Larry, I think they 100% should do it. Will they do it? I think they're so bought into this rookie contract idea at quarterback, and I think they're so bought into Brock Purdy. I don't think they would take that type of risk or shot. If I think they should, I just don't get the feeling that they will.
Yeah, the only way I think they do it, Vish, is if Purdy, they get some indication, some early return post-surgery here in the next few weeks that, man, it doesn't look good. Like, he's going to miss all of this year, because I don't believe they believe in Trey, and I don't think they would entrust their season to Darnold. And when I say I don't think they believe in Trey, I don't think they believe in Trey short term to lead them to a Super Bowl this year. And they want to compete for a Super Bowl this year. So there's that. I guess my first read on it was just this whole report. This is a New York-based guy,
right,
who, who's trying to get clicks and get attention and get traction on a topic. So he's going to talk NFL, and he's going to talk quarterbacks, and he's going to work the Jets in. And then so it's like, you know what I mean? So like he's parking his car at the corner of New York Jets and quarterback controversy. So he knows it's a big hitter. And so I don't think he really cares about, he didn't cite a source. What was it? Craig Carton cited no source.
Right.
I heard the Niners could jump in there. To me, he's not a trustworthy source. So
Little,
I don't put a whole lot of credence into it until I get a second source. And I don't think they would block Brock Purdy if Brock Purdy were healthy. But I do think they would go after Rodgers if Brock Purdy wasn't going to be healthy, and if they don't believe in Trey Lance in the short term. And I think that's likely because they just brought in Darnold, and they're suggesting that they're on an even playing field, Darnold and Lance, going into camp. So to me, it should be Purdy, then Lance, then Darnold. But from my viewpoint, but from their viewpoint, it's Purdy, Darnold, and Lance are on the same level at this point.
it's interesting because I think you and I look at it as Purdy, Lance, Darnold,
Yes,
because we don't see a lot of long-term net gain from Sam Darnold at this point, right?
but
We
Kyle
think that
does.
the best Shanahan can do is kind of have him playing good football, but we don't see the ceiling that we ultimately see with Trey Lance if you actually get him to play. It's interesting because the way Kyle talked about Darnold, he feels like he has two different prospects in Lance or Darnold with equally high ceilings, and that if it doesn't work out with Lance, he still has 24-year-old Darnold here for pretty cheap, who could be equally as talented, right?
They
Do you
had
get the same
identical
vibe?
draft position.
Right. And I mean, the Jets traded up 3 second-round picks to go from 6 to 3 with the Indianapolis Colts to draft Sam Darnold. So he was traded up for as well. But isn't it interesting how that viewpoint seems to be there? That's why I get that vibe. They don't seem so bothered. Like, to me, if Purdy is playing, I understand why he's playing, right? If he's not, I've reiterated like 7 different times this offseason, you would just develop Lance, right? Because that's what you were going to do in 2022. He just got hurt. He's not giving you a reason to get away from that plan other than the fact that he got hurt. And now you don't have another quarterback because Purdy's hurt. So you would go back to that. But they don't seem to think that. They seem to think, well, now that Purdy's hurt, it could be one of Darnold or Lance. We're going to hedge our bet with Lance here. And we're going to get another guy whose talent we believe in so much that we're going to go sign him, 30 minutes into the legal tampering period in free agency. And we're going to give him contract incentives up to $11 million, and which is, top level backup money, borderline starter money. Or no, not borderline starter money. Excuse me. That's high level backup money. And then, of course, he's carrying what, the 15th or 16th highest cap hit on the team. So clearly, they're not going to just cut him. He's on the roster for at least 2023. So to me, Larry, the way I read it, and I think you're reading it the same way, is that they just view both of them as equal opportunity. Like they think that, okay, if it works out with Lance, we could have a star quarterback. If it works out with Darnold, we could have a star quarterback. If it works out with neither, we have Purdy.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's pretty much summed up. I mean, I said it at the end of the year that Purdy was the number one guy, and I got
Right.
a lot of pushback. There were a lot of people who were like, "Dude, how can you say that? They're gonna compete." Well, then we got to the off season, and Kyle and John and Jed all basically said they agreed with me. So
Right.
now they've made Purdy the number one guy. The biggest, most odd, I mean, the most significant new development, if there is such a thing on the Niners, is not just the arrival of Darnold, it's Shanahan's ridiculous commentary about Darnold, how he's got a skill set that's as good as any, and that, that, I mean, that he's always loved him and he loves the way he throws and this and that. It's like, this guy's got horrendous stats in a bunch of games and a ton of turnovers, both in college and the pros. But clearly, Kyle really likes him. So, and then there's these other reports about, Ari Meyerov and others suggesting that the 49ers may entertain deals for Trey. And there's just a lot of chatter about that as well. And I'm getting a lot of people who are, just because I'm reading the tea leaves. I have no sources. I'm sitting here in Walnut Creek. I haven't seen John Lynch since the playoff ended. I have no inside source. I'm just reading the tea leaves, and I don't really care. And yet,
You know,
just because I read the tea leaves as I think Brock's going to be their starter, and that they may trade Trey, even though they literally have said that, and there's other reports that indicate as much. still I get all this hate every time I go on YouTube with people going, "You want to get rid of Lance?" Why? Because I suggested that I think they're going to trade him. Sorry, it's like, dude, talk about killing the messenger because you don't like the message. My
Right.
God, everybody needs to
Right.
pump the
Right.
brakes. It's an opinion,
Right.
boy.
And that's something I've noticed, right? It's two things I would say I've noticed with 49ers fans. One is any conversation that makes them the slightest bit uncomfortable in how they feel about the team, rather than listening to that conversation and having a direct rebuttal towards that conversation, it's immediate ad hominem attack at whoever delivered that message.
Right.
Immediate. It's immediate. There,
Florio.
right, right. There's a couple people I've noticed that seem to escape that wrath for reasons that I don't know, and whatever, good for them that they can, but
Right.
otherwise there isn't. And then the other thing I've noticed is that there's 49ers fans, and I would say Bay Area fans in general, and I guess I can't necessarily relate to this as much just because I don't live in the Bay Area, but they have an obsession with homegrown stars. They love homegrown stars. I think it's because like all the big stars in the Bay Area, from Steph Curry, Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, they're all homegrown. They love having these homegrown players who go through, the difficulties and win in the Bay Area, being drafted by the team and all of that. And so, like, I always see comments and stuff like, I would rather have Purdy than Aaron Rodgers. Wait, why? And it won't be for any other reason as I just like Purdy better. And that's fine. But when we're getting to a football conversation, especially with Purdy's elbow hurt, like this is a two-time back-to-back MVP quarterback who's won 2 out of the last 3 MVPs. He's won 4 MVPs in his career. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen. For all the dislike you may have of Aaron Rodgers, if you put him on the 49ers tomorrow, are they not the prohibitive favorite? And that's with the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, winning 2 out of 4 Super Bowls.
Well, yes and no. I understand where people are coming from because the unspoken part of Lamar or Cousins or most veteran quarterbacks are that you're going to pay $20 million plus for him. And everybody
Right.
knows the difference between a rookie quarterback deal and a veteran quarterback deal. It's significant. We just heard Shanahan tell us in Arizona that it was, one of the keys to the roster construction for the Niners is having a quarterback on a rookie deal. We wouldn't have Javon Hargrave. We wouldn't have Charvarius Ward. You know what? People believe that. And so it is true. But Rodgers this year in this scenario, because Green Bay, I think, set their wits end and is wanting to move him, and they've got another replacement in Love, and he has a $15 million cap hit. In some ways, he doesn't fit into that category. So I think they're pushing back because some of them are pushing back just because they love Purdy or love Lance or love the young guy. But there's a lot of people pushing back because they're pretty sophisticated fans, and they're thinking that Rodgers is just going to cost way too much. And it's not just a Rodgers or rookie. It's a Rodgers, and then you don't have Bosa, and you don't have Ayuk, and all these different key cogs that they want to have going forward. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But Rodgers in this situation actually is pretty cheap. He's $15 million.
Right.
But I mean, you still went for Darnold already. So it's like you're already spending probably more at the quarterback position than you needed to.
See, I think that the concept of going with the rookie quarterback deal makes sense in theory if you don't have one of those guys that are the exception to the rule, right? Like Patrick Mahomes, would you rather have him or would you rather have a quarterback at a rookie deal? I would rather have Mahomes even if he's making $100 million a year.
Yeah, I would too.
And so I think if we're talking Lamar and Rodgers, those guys are very close to the exception conversation. I think 4 in the NFL, everyone would agree are in the exception conversation. Mahomes is one for sure. And then I would say Allen, Burrow, Herbert, Larry. I don't know if you think anybody else should be there, but those would be the 4 that I would say, okay, you pay them whatever because you feel like you're going to have a chance to compete with them every single year because you have one of those guys. And so you're not at a loss if you're paying your quarterback because those guys are that special. I think Rodgers is on the precipice of that conversation still. I think Lamar Jackson, again, is on the precipice of that conversation, depending on how you want to argue it, what you prefer, what you're looking to do. Perhaps you can, point out to me that Lamar is difficult to negotiate with and you don't want to go through that process. Okay, I buy it. You can maybe tell me Rodgers is very difficult to work with and all of that, but I don't think the Niners need a long-term agreement with Aaron Rodgers. They don't need this to work with Aaron Rodgers in 2024. They don't need it to work in 2025 because they're bought into Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy will for sure be fully healthy in 2024, right? They just need Rodgers in 2023, really. And Rodgers is taking football on a year-to-year basis. We've had the Aaron Rodgers retirement conversation for 3 straight off seasons now. So I just feel like if you could make it happen, it makes too much sense, especially for just 2023 when you can handle the rest of your problems and kind of resume this plan down the road in 2024. I don't think it's a possibility. I don't think Green Bay would ever trade him to San Francisco. I think that's a variable in this that we have not discussed and probably exists. But if we're just talking about if Rodgers is on the table and completely possible, why would the 49ers say no? This is
Yeah, only thing I'll say is how much clout does Rodgers have? How much clout does he wield? I mean, he's at that point where he's made a ton of money, and it sounds like he's either going to play where he wants to play or he's going to retire. Now, he's publicly said he wants to play with the Jets. Doesn't mean he wants to play with the Jets. Just means he publicly said he wanted to play with the Jets. For all we know, he's just saying that so he doesn't get crushed in the media. Because if he said he didn't want to play for the Jets and want to play for another team, he would be getting crushed by the New York media. So he might be saying publicly, I want to go to the Jets. But then he's saying to the Packers privately, I ain't going to the Jets. You know what I mean?
right.
So
How bad does he look,
we don't
though?
know.
Because he's someone that, I mean, I don't know how many of his McAfee interviews you've seen, but he's someone that's clearly sensitive to how people talk about him. I mean, he's pushed back indirectly, unprovoked, in fact, many times to some of the prevailing narratives that are, true or not. He believes them to not be true. They're pushed out for a reason about him. Certain amount of people believe they're true, but he clearly cares about his public perception. How bad would he look if he told the Jets he's coming? The Jets did all of this. You got Sauce Gardner and Garrett
Alan
Wilson
Lazard.
celebrating with the cheese head. They just gave Alan Lazard a ton of money. They traded Elijah Moore because they didn't want, I guess, another young receiver there with Aaron Rodgers. They made all of these moves. They've clearly just cleared the red carpet and said, Aaron Rodgers, come here, save us. We're giving you everything. He said, I'm going to the Jets. And then if he reneges on that, how bad does he look publicly? I guess people forget quickly. I mean, Josh McDaniels, I thought that would stick with him, and he was a head coach 2 years later. So maybe people will forget if he wins a Super Bowl with the 49ers. But there's going to be a short period that he's going to look really, really bad.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, Shanahan and Lynch are just trying to race towards trying to win that Super Bowl because I think they understand they'll be held in a different, they'll be seen in a different light by the faithful, by the ownership group, by the locker room, by the entire organization, the entire Niner Nation will look at them differently if they get a 6th Lombardi. And so I think they're trying to just have laser focus on that. And not worry about feelings and I think Rodgers might be in his own category. I think Shanahan's already put to bed the Lamar, and I think we can put to bed the Cousins, but I think Rodgers is different. Rodgers is cheaper. Rodgers, does jive with your timeline with Purdy. I mean, if you traded for Lamar, you're basically just telling Purdy you're not the guy. But if you trade for Rodgers, you're saying you're not the guy yet. And there's a big difference.
Or we're not going to force you to come back this year from your injury and play the same way as last year and expect you to go win the Super Bowl for us. We're going to give you a year to rehab. You make sure you get healthy. That's the most important thing. You're still our guy. Once you're healthy, you will be your guy in 2024. We're going to just go see and try and win this thing with Aaron Rodgers in 2023. There's a way to sell that for sure. I will say I'm not closing the door on Cousins in 2024. There's a possibility that, everybody just washes out this year at quarterback for the 49ers, and they're stuck going back to the well, and Cousins is a free agent in 2024, and we know how Shanahan seems to like him. Now, one last variable I will throw into the pond of Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers has been very, very vocal about how he doesn't always like all the pre-snap motion on plays, right? And the Niners use so much pre-snap motion to set up their run game, to create angles and advantages in their run game. And Rodgers doesn't like all that movement because he's a guy. I mean, Mike McCarthy, the offense that he grew up in playing, a very stagnant offense, spread out. Rodgers was able to come to the line of scrimmage, have a very clear picture of what the defense is in. It was very timing, rhythm-based offense. He would know where to go with the ball, and he would do that. Now, if you look at the Packers offense the last 2-3 years, I would say there's more Mike McCarthy features to it than there's Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan features to it. Now, it doesn't mean that, Matt LaFleur wasn't putting his touches on the offense. I think he's a smart and good play caller. It just felt like Rodgers had probably a more control of what was being run and what was being done on the offense. Now, we know Shanahan is very good at adjusting his offense to his personnel. We've seen him make adjustments to his players in the past. I'm not going to say he doesn't do that, but we also know he is very, very, I don't know if stubborn is the right word, but he is very, very particular on how his offense is run, how they sequence certain plays, and he wants the quarterback to play a certain way. Do you have any fear about the dynamic of Rodgers and Shanahan, given that they're both strong personalities? I do know that there were people speculating this offseason when Davante Adams was doing his best to recruit Aaron Rodgers, that Josh McDaniels, who's also very particular about his offense being run, that was something that they felt that's why they didn't go after Aaron Rodgers, because that just wouldn't be a personality click for them. Do you have any concerns that way?
No, I don't, because I think Rodgers is in a good mental space as far as he's coming to a team that under Brock Purdy averaged 33 points a game. Green Bay only scored 30 in a game, I think 3 times all season.
Right.
So, at one point they lost 5 in a row from early October to early November. So, I if Rodgers was absolutely on top of his game, on top of the football world, it would be one thing. But he's coming off a year where he didn't play all that great. He had 26 touchdowns, 12 picks, and he wasn't great. I mean, he was okay. He completed 64% of his passes, but the year before that, 76%. The year before that, 77%. So I think he's not the same player that he was, and I think because of that, he'll be open to this situation.
Fair enough. MGM Productions, appreciate the donation, says, how many players at each position do you predict we draft? Secondary question, over under 7.5 players drafted this year. Larry Krueger.
Oh, total number of players drafted?
Yes.
I'd say 10. I'd say 10 players. I mean, they'll probably trade up with a couple picks, but I think that they've done well on day 3 of the draft, and day 3 draft picks don't cost you a lot of money. Right now they have 11 picks. I could see them shuffling, making some moves, moving up, moving back, but I would say 9 or 10. And as far as what will they draft, I think they'll draft at least one quarterback, one running back, one tight end, one receiver, one offensive lineman, 2 defensive linemen, and 2 DBs. So that's 9. Yeah. So, and then maybe something else, maybe a kicker, but that would be my guess. 2 D linemen,
Okay.
2 D linemen, 2 DBs, a kicker, and then basically a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, a tight end, and an offensive lineman.
Okay, so I'm with you on the first part. I think the over under, I think 7.5 is too low if you're setting that line. I think they're going to draft 8 to 10 players. Um, and I think they should. Like you said, they've been very good at drafting on the third day of the draft. There's no doubt about that. Now, the positions, I actually think you nailed the breakdown. It's funny because I was thinking if you were going to go with the sweet spot of 10, I would jump in and say the exact same thing. 2 defensive linemen, 1 offensive lineman, 2 defensive backs, one's a safety, one's a corner I think they'll take late. like a Tariq Castro Fields, like the corner they took Tim Harris from Virginia Tech a few years ago, a guy with height, a pure height weight speed guy that could maybe play special teams as a practice squad guy. Definitely a backup tight end. Oh my God, this tight end class is good, Larry. Oh my God, it's good.
Though the guy that I saw they just worked out, I'm not a fan of. The 6'8" guy,
Really?
Kuntz. Yeah, I watched his film. I think it looks like he's going to get broken in half. I mean, he just looks
Why do you
so
say that?
well because he's got really skinny calves and really skinny ankles, and you're 6'7", and he played at Old Dominion. He just exposes his legs. I think he's going to take. I fear for his injuries. But like I think there's some really good tight ends in this draft. I love Michael Mayer. I love that
I
kid
know.
Tucker Kraft.
Dalton
Um,
Kincaid is a beast.
Kincaid's good. I mean, Laporta's pretty good. Darnell
Yeah.
Washington. There's a lot of good players. Payne Durham, Davis Allen, Schoonmaker. But I just think
Yes.
the 6'8" guy looks a little like his legs would snap.
That's a very, very interesting take. That's a very, very scout answer to asking about a player. His legs look like they could snap, but that does matter. I'm with you though on that positional breakdown. MGM Productions. Appreciate the donation. Appreciate the question. Miguel Ruiz says, "My sources. I wonder who these sources are, Larry. You got someone in your inner circle talking. You better check on your son. You better check on Len. Somebody's given Miguel this information, but he says my sources told me Larry Krueger is the number one advocate about trading Trey Lance.
Who's your
Got that
source?
out of the
Ryan
way.
Hensley? Who's your source, Miguel? No, come on. I'm not an advocate. Understand the difference between a prediction and a wish. If I'll put out my own mock draft and tell you what I think they ought to do. That's who I'm advocating for. What I'm not advocating. There's a difference. The word is not advocate. It's predict. I am the number one predictor that Trey will be traded, but not advocate.
I have something very interesting to add to this. Um, it's actually very, very relevant to this specific conversation. Do you remember when we were talking about, the was it the March Madness bracket of Niners content creators? I told you I think Croc's gonna win because nobody ever gets mad when Croc says anything. And I
Right.
pointed out the Frank Gore thing and how people are still so angry at me about it, but nobody ever cares that Croc said it too. Somebody told me, and I don't know this to be true because I didn't watch the lockdown episode, but actually not somebody. Ashley Ariona on Twitter. She's in the chat often. I think a lot of people know her on Twitter too. She messaged me and DM'd me that Croc said on lockdown that he would trade Trey Lance for a third round pick as well. So it sounds like there's somebody else on this ship with you, Larry. Unfortunately,
Really?
Croc,
He
I mean,
said
and
a
I get it.
third?
He is a really, really great guy. So nobody's going to get on him about it. But there's somebody else on this ship with you, Larry. But it sounds like you're the one that's going to have to take it because, like we talked about before, when we get to uncomfortable conversations for this fan base at times, it just turns into ad hominem at the guy who said it rather than let's actually argue about what he said.
And you know what? If people need to put me out there and it's lick their chops at I'm gonna throw receipts in your face. All right, all right, I'll remember that. I'm writing down everybody's name and I'm remembering, and I'll be throwing my own receipts if it happens. You
What
know,
receipts are they going to throw, though? That's what I don't
Well,
understand. That you're
they're gonna
predicting?
say they're gonna say, "Oh, you were wrong. You were wrong. You said they were People are wrong in that they think I'm rooting for them to trade Trey. I'm just looking at the Niners situation, and it's clear you wouldn't bring in Sam Darnold, who was just starting last year, if you didn't think, if you love Trey. If Trey's awesome, you're just going with Trey and Brock and like Easton Stick or some nothing, nobody third
Right.
quarterback, and you're spending your money elsewhere.
Right.
But they're
Right.
clearly hedging. They're clearly hedging, and if you listen to enough people and you read the tea leaves, it's pretty obvious that their evaluation is that Brock Purdy is the better of the two quarterbacks right now.
Right. And I think that even if that situation, so let's say they don't trade him, right? I don't think they're going to trade him until the draft. Now, I'm reading the tea leaves similarly to you because I agree that trading him is going to be a conversation at any point this offseason. I just don't think because of the quarterback injury and not knowing at the until the 3 month mark exactly when Purdy's coming back, I don't think they take that plunge during the draft. Now, I disagree with you there. But let's say that conversation does come up this offseason and all of that. I feel like the only way things change and you become actually wrong is if Lance just balls out in camp and he just proves that he's the guy week 1. But then circumstances change too, right? Because if the 49ers thought that that was going to happen this offseason for sure, now they've left the door, barely open for it to happen. They haven't fully shut the door on it happening, but they haven't left the door wide open and said, Trey Lance, come through and do what you do. They said, Trey Lance, you're going to have to break through this door by beating out Sam Darnold, and then you're going to have to go kill it if you get an opportunity to play week 1, week 2, week 3, or whenever until Brock Purdy comes back, right? Like even Shanahan said it would be very difficult for him to beat him out because of what Brock Purdy did in games. So when we throw in all of that, you're then commenting on a completely different situation than the one Larry commented on. So it's like if the situation changes that much, are you really wrong? It turns into a real conversation there.
We'll see, because let's be honest, the Niners, forget me, because who am I? But the Niners, Lynch and Shanahan, and the guys who actually made the selection are going to have to answer questions if they trade Trey, because they're the ones who invested in him. They're the ones who told us he was the franchise quarterback. And so if they move off of that, they're not going to be able to move off of that without an explanation. They're going to have an explanation. And if there's mistakes or if it's viewed as they failed, they're going to have to own that, and whether I predicted it would happen or not, that's secondary. That's just talk.
Right.
They actually invest. They're the ones who told us this is the franchise quarterback, and they got bailed out because some guy named Slowick pounded the table for Brock Purdy, and Brock.
Is that what happened?
Yeah. According to the report,
what was the report?
Their scout, Lynch has said a couple times that one of their guys, Slowick, Bobby Slowick or Kevin Slowick or one of these Slowick brothers, pounded the table for Brock, and they went with it. We'll see.
Shout out to him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Heck, if you're that guy, man, you're living right.
And,
in fact, I might listen to that guy again. If that guy's still in the room, this is a really good draft, I think, for quarterbacks after round 1. And
I agree.
If they got a guy in the room that could handicap Brock Purdy as being a good player, maybe they got somebody who can pick a winner out of these day 2, day 3 quarterbacks again. And you can never have enough good quarterbacks, that's for sure. Because you can always trade them.
I agree with you there completely. And I especially on your point about the quarterback as well. I would like to just say before, by the way, Miguel Ruiz, appreciate the donation again. He says, Larry, in all seriousness, I agree with you. I get the vibes they're trading Trey, and I think it might not be the move to make. And so let's talk about that second part.
I think Miguel's right.
Right. I just wanted to get you on record there because you and I agreed on this, I feel like, right as the offseason started and once we knew that Brock Purdy was severely injured. I think you and I agree the move that they should make is they should just open up the red carpet for Trey Lance once again this offseason. As long as Brock Purdy's not healthy, just give him all the leeway to try and prove you that he's not the guy on the football field. Unless he's already proved it to you.
Well, I mean, that's the part that's mysterious about this whole thing. The Brock injury, on the surface, when we were talking about it in February, we're like, well, it's an unfortunate break, but it's also a fortunate break for Trey because now Trey's got a clear runway to do nothing but play. And then all of a sudden Darnold's showing up and Shanahan's talking about him like he's Dan Marino. So it's created a lot of confusion. And then Shanahan's talking about, we like our quarterbacks, but we'll listen to trade offers. Well, what does that mean? They just signed Darnold. They just praised Purdy. So you're basically saying you're listening to trade offers for Trey Lance. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
I mean, and I still don't think they would trade him if they don't get a good price. But then you got to define what is a good price.
Right.
And I think a good price for him is probably anything from like the 10th pick to like the 50th pick. And if you ask me, what's the likelihood that somebody between 10 and 50, if you could trade that one pick to the 49ers, pick 47 and get Trey Lance, or you could get a quarterback at 47, I will say this. I think Trey Lance clearly, in my mind, now, and I'm not the world's greatest scout, but in my mind, clearly, the Trey Lance will be better than the quarterback than you can get at 47. But I think the Niners would be willing to trade Trey for that 47th pick, and thus that's what kind of makes me really think it's going to happen, because you look at what it would take to get him, what other teams might be willing to trade for him, what the Niners might be willing to take, and I think it all jives. I think it all works out. I think there might be a round and a half of picks there that they're willing to take for him that other teams are probably willing to pay for him. That's why I think he's going to get moved.
And for what it's worth, just for the record, Josh Rosen, after his rookie year, which was not a good year, other than, one really, really good throw to Christian Kirk on a 75-yard touchdown on a really, really bad play from Adrian Colbert as the post safety. And he beat the Niners twice that year, but he didn't play well. He was traded for the 49th overall pick in the draft. So it's not out of the realm of possibility.
And he sucked. I mean, he's really, to me,
he had one
Trey's
good
way
game
better.
as a rookie. His first game against Seattle, when he played, I think, at
Played
home.
okay against the
Earl
Niners.
Thomas broke his leg.
Do you remember the game up top? Well, he went up top.
He had one
Christian
good
Kirk.
drive down the stretch where he made a nice throw to the back of the end zone to win the game, and then he had that one really, really good throw on time, in rhythm, play action, shot play. Again, horrible play from Adrian Colbert playing free safety in the post, but other than that, I felt like the Seattle game was the only game he played well his rookie year. I like Josh Rosen just because I liked how he threw the ball. I'm a sucker for smooth throwers, and Josh Rosen was as smooth as they come as a passer coming out of college. And so I watched a lot of his rookie year. It was not good.
Well, just look at it this way. Without me, you would have then if there was a trade, if it was a trade of Trey Lance this spring, everybody would just be like, wow, shocked. Now, if it happens, at least somebody can say, well, somebody predicted it, right?
Well, I think if it happens,
nobody predicted it, really.
I think the difference is right now I feel like people are against your prediction because they don't want it to happen.
They don't want it to happen.
Right, but I think if it does happen, you will remain steadfast, as will I, that they made the wrong move. Unless it's a move that gets them Aaron Rodgers this offseason, I think trading him right now at the draft time, given all the unknowns surrounding Brock Purdy, and putting all of your eggs in the Sam Darnold basket until Brock Purdy comes back, I would 100% say it's the wrong move. You would say steadfast in that belief. Now, all those people who are upset about you trading him will likely somehow justify that move and say, well, I get why they traded him. They should have traded him. Look at the return they got. So it's interesting like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm critical of the Niners, right? I'm critical. So if they make a trade of Trey that I don't like, I'll rip it. And if they make a trade for Trey for a draft pick and they pick a player that I don't like, I'll rip it. But if they trade Trey for a pick and they turn it into Michael Mayer, and Michael Mayer goes on to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and they go on to win the Super Bowl, will people still rip it? Or will they at that point go, maybe Trey, maybe Brock and Darnold and who knows, Max Duggan and Michael Mayer at tight end, maybe that is better than having Trey. It really depends. It's all going to depend on scoreboard. At the end. What do you trade him? Do you trade him? Do you not? If you trade him, what do you get? How does the players that you got back in return play? And then what does he do wherever he goes?
I will say this.
It's all going to be factored in.
I will say this, and I'm someone who's not as, bullish on the upside of Trey Lance as you. Like, you genuinely believe no matter where he's going to end up, he's going to become a really good quarterback at some point. It's just going to take some time, right? You've said that on the record so many times. I'm not that optimistic.
I know, and I don't think they are either.
Yeah, I'm very 50-50 on that proposition. So now that I've established that, I will say this. If they trade Trey Lance this offseason for anything other than to get a veteran quarterback to kind of bridge the gap of 2023 to resume with Brock Purdy in 2024 to kind of protect that injury. If they just trade him for a draft pick and put their eggs into the Sam Darnold basket until Purdy comes back and all of that in terms of 2023, it's the wrong move. I think it's the wrong move all the way across the board. It would be the wrong move for sure, in my opinion. And I'm not even telling you that I'm saying this because I think Trey Lance is going to be a superstar. I'm not saying that. I just think that when you look at the entire value of the quarterback position for them, the proposition that they've created, which is to create the cheapest quarterback room possible. Okay, you've done that. Your quarterback room is still really cheap. You have one guy who you think has established himself as a starter, but he's severely injured. Now you're dealing with one guy who you traded up a lot for to draft, who you like at some point, whatever. Now we don't know where he stands. You say you still like him, but in the same breath, you're having him compete with another guy who you're clearly smitten with for whatever reason. He started 55 games in the NFL, but you're smitten with him because of your pre-draft evaluation. You have something with him. You signed him 30 minutes into the legal tampering period of free agency, right? So you have a guy like that in Sam Darnold. To me, Larry, 100% you just let this quarterback's position play itself out this offseason. If this is the plan that you've signed up for, unless you're not convinced in this plan, you're not convinced in any of these guys. And in that case, I would say go get a veteran quarterback, and they've kind of screwed themselves in that position either. So if they're married to this idea, I would say don't move any of these guys. Let it play itself out because I feel like there's still unknowns with Purdy's injury. Darnold hasn't given me any confidence at any point of his career, no matter how much you like his talent, for me to say that if I had to go into the season and I knew Sam Darnold had to start the first 8 games of the season for me, I'm going to be confident. And then there's Trey Lance, who, while he has only played 4.5 games and we're still such an unknown with so much of his skill set, there's enough talent there where you feel like you have to at least know, hey, what is the growth capability of the player, right? Like you could get to 3 weeks into Trey Lance where week 1 is crappy and then week 3 is awesome all of a sudden, right? Like he's getting better so fast. Or you could find out, well, week 1's crappy, week 2's crappy, week 3's crappy. We haven't even gone through that because he's not been able to even start back-to-back games. And so until we get to that point, I feel like just remain steadfast, keep this homeostasis, continue with this. It's actually not homeostasis because it's not a stable environment. Like we're constantly talking about controversy surrounding the quarterbacks, but just keep it as is, Larry, is what I would say is the move I would make. Now, the speculation from you and I is surrounding reading the tea leaves, but in my opinion, if you wanted my take on the entire quarterback situation, which I'm not sure anybody asked for it, but I gave it to you. That's what I would say. And I think that you also agree with that based on all our conversations about it. And I feel like you actually agree with it and probably have a little more conviction in it more than me because you wanted Trey Lance before the draft. You truly believe in his upside. So it's a little bit different from me, who's perhaps not as fully embracing the idea that Lance is just going to be a superstar, but I would like to see what happens with his career before I make any groundbreaking claims. Whereas you're bought in, you think he's going to be a star. That's different.
I know. And I want to see him fail before I move off of him. I don't want to take anybody's word for it. I like Kyle Shanahan. I like John Lynch. They are fallible when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks. It's a proven fact. So I'm not taking their word for it. I don't want to take their word for it. And when I say that, guess what? I think I speak for a lot of Niner fans who like Shanahan, who like Lynch, but have seen the evaluations of quarterbacks. And it's like, dude, you want to move Trey Lance and get down the road? Fine. But let's see it first. Can we see it first? Do we have to take your word for it? Do we have to go off of practice film? Can't we just actually put him out there in a decent game plan where he's not just running quarterback power and see what he looks like for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 games before? And then now here we have an opportunity to maybe give him a 5-game stretch, maybe 3 preseason games and 2 or 3 regular season games. And we maybe can't do that. It's like, you may move him ahead of time. You may bring in Lance or bring in Darnold. You may push Darnold to the top of the list. You may trade Trey. I'm okay with whatever the outcome, but I don't I'm not going to take their word for it. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. When you willingly decide to pass up on Watson and Mahomes because you love Brian Hoyer and the idea of Kirk Cousins, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. They don't get the benefit of the doubt on quarterbacks. They've swung and missed. They lucked out when Purdy. Right now they're lucky. Right now they're lucky and really questionable at evaluating quarterbacks, and maybe that will change. But I want to see it first, and I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt. So it's like I'm predicting that they're going to trade Trey because I really think it's coming, but I get the sense that we're going to all be somewhat frustrated because they're going to move him before he shows us all what he's got. Some people, Vish, would argue that now's the right time to trade him because next time he plays, if he plays poorly, his value drops
Yeah,
precipitously.
right.
I do understand that, but I mean, I personally, I would like, I don't want to take their word for it. I want to see it. I want to see
And
it, and I'd rather get less for Lance and see it myself than just say, trust me, and then have him wind up being a stud in Minnesota for the next 15 years.
And I agree with you. And you can say, well, they can't afford to give the season away by seeing him develop. Well, we're far past that point. They should have thought about those things before they traded all that they did to get him. Now that they have done that, there is a level. I understand it's sunk cost, all of that, but they owe him, I feel like, that opportunity. He's owed that opportunity. He was supposed to get it this year. He didn't get it, not because he played poorly, because he got hurt. This offseason, Brock Purdy completely, I understand. He's now hurt. I feel like Trey Lance is owed that opportunity. Whether he gets it is a different thing. And I'm with you on the 49ers not, deserving our benefit of the doubt with the quarterback situation. Because at the same time, look, the Jimmy Garoppolo era in San Francisco was successful. Overall, Garoppolo was, a solid quarterback. Like, he started for a few years. Like, he had a level of success that, whether you want to nitpick at his skill set or not, that level of success will stand the test of time across the NFL. Like, he was a good player. Now, this was also the same team that gave him, generational money, generational wealth. They made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. 7 games into his NFL career, 7 starts, 5 starts in San Francisco, and then 8 starts into his career, right? Because he started 10 starts into his career, 8 starts into his San Francisco career, which was, the first 3 starts of 2018. They decided that he wasn't worth that contract anymore, Larry. We had quarterback rumors about Jimmy Garoppolo and them not liking him from 2019. We had them in 2020. We had them in 2021. We had them in 2022, of course, and finally he's gone in 2023. So they themselves told us that they didn't agree with what their original evaluation of the player was, because 5 games into it, they gave him the biggest contract ever. 8 games into it, they decided they made a mistake by giving him the biggest contract ever. They told reporters that.
And one other thing on the land, I know you're totally right. And that's it. And they don't deserve they deserve the benefit of the doubt as far as anybody who says that Shanahan should be fired is freaking high. I mean, they've been to 3 of the last four NFC championship games. I mean, that kind of diatribe is just garbage. But I will say this, though. All the people who were kept throwing out, like, they can't, there's a lot of people who are like, well, they'll trade Trey next year. Well, if you've made your evaluation that you're going with Purdy this year and you're not going to put him on the field to the point where you're bringing in Sam Darnold to prevent him from playing, then why would you wait till next year so you could devalue your asset that much more? But one of the things that I've heard brought up a number of times is that Trey's cap hit would be the reason that they wouldn't trade him before the draft.
I brought it up. Yeah.
You've brought it up, and others have as well. And there was a guy who wrote an article this week about my whole prediction, and he went and did the deep dive on the cap hit, and the cap hit's around $10 million, and they can gain about $8.5 million if they want to redo the Christian McCaffrey contract. So all they have to do is redo McCaffrey's contract, and suddenly trading Trey Lance is only $1.5 million cap hit. So we just need to they won't trade him, and they won't get a first. It's like, what do you think Trey's worth? Trey's probably worth at least a third. And you have 3/3. So if you traded,
There's
if you
there's no
traded,
way of knowing what he's worth, right?
well,
Because there's
let's just say
never been a
minimum he's
quarterback
worth,
with.
minimum
Have you
he's worth a third.
right? But have we ever even seen a situation similar to this? Given how much the Niners traded up to get him, he's the most inexperienced quarterback we've ever seen. Like
Right.
it's
He's
difficult,
very
but I would
raw.
say third is a very very
I
fair
would say,
estimation.
yeah, he might be
Easy,
worth a second. But my whole
maybe,
point is,
yeah.
if you're willing to trade, and I think that if they did trade him, they wouldn't just trade him straight for one pick. They'd probably group it in some kind of, here's a pick, here's a conditional pick, here's a this, here's a that. My
They
point
would do
is,
the New England Patriots trade where they make it turn very very muddy. Where
yeah,
like yeah
it's
they
like,
traded Chandler Jones for a second and a fifth, but the Patriots ended up making like 8 different moves based
right.
on that move. So
So you
you
can't
can't.
really track it down and compare it. But I just think that the point is this: by trading Trey Lance and other assets, if you have to, you could get into the first round if you're the Niners. And when I say that, people are like, you're not going to get a first round pick for Trey. Did you listen to what I just said? I said trading Trey and a third round pick and a conditional pick would get you into the first round. So to me, it's just a matter of, is there a player that's worth going up for? Is there a player that you could get at the end of the first round that would change your fortunes to the level that, heck yeah, you do it. And I think Michael Mayer, the tight end from Notre Dame, might be that player, but it might be a tackle. It might be a
Okay.
corner. It might be a D end. I mean, it could be any of
I
those positions. Could be a free safety. Could be somebody that they think is truly a difference maker. So that's
so
all I was saying. I mean, and so many people have pushed back on, they're not going to get a first. You have no idea what his value is. I'm just estimating his value is, I'm looking at where would Trey go if he was in this draft. And I think he would probably go in the mid-second round. That'd be my guess. So I think if you wanted to trade a third round pick and Trey, you probably could get into the back of the first round.
maybe
Maybe.
maybe I think it's worth it. I think that's a completely different conversation. It's an interesting one. I will say in regards to them making that trade look funny, I'm not sure if they'll do that. I don't know if I've ever said this on stream, but it's definitely a conversation I had with Grant, I think, on the phone. One of the weird things about the Javon Kinlaw Buckner trade was that they traded Buckner and they traded down a spot, so I guess they got a little bit more. But they took a defensive tackle at that exact spot and they gave him number 99. So they put all the pressure on him to be DeForest Buckner from day one. And it felt like, look, Javon Kinlaw has been disappointing. In my opinion, I love the player before the draft. So in my opinion, it has more to do with health than the player itself. Other people may disagree with that assessment, but he's been disappointing nonetheless. But I feel like there was a level to Javon Kinlaw that they put the pressure on him by making him wear number 99, the same exact number of Buckner, basically taking him with the exact pick that they traded for Buckner. They put a level of pressure on Kinlaw that, it might have been difficult for him to live up to that no matter what, I know he's been a disappointment, but he may be looked at as a disappointment even if he was a little bit healthier throughout his career and he was playing a lot better just because he might not have matched the production that DeForest Buckner provided. And so that comparison was always going to exist, and they welcome that comparison. So I'm not 100% sure if they would do that. I do think that would be the prudent way to make that trade, which you and I agree they shouldn't do. But I can't even 100% say that that's something they would do that way, because the way they handled that Kinlaw Buckner entire situation is a little bit weird. The way they handled the trade up to go up to 3 and take the quarterback in the first place was revolutionary. We've never seen a team trade up that way. We've never seen a team trade up and be okay with multiple options and just want to trade up for a spot rather than a quarterback. It's kind of a gray area sometimes with how they do business. But MGM Productions asks us, what home game would you be most excited to attend?
To me, I love watching the Niners play the Seahawks.
Okay.
I just love it. To me, Niners Seahawks is just, it's kind of like the hate rivalry. You know what I mean? There's true hate there. So I like that one. Anytime there's Cowboys involved, it's great as well. But the only thing with the Cowboys is the Cowboys travel well. So I don't necessarily love seeing the Cowboys. But yeah, I would say the Seahawks. But like, who's coming in this year? Is Pittsburgh coming in, or they're going there, aren't they?
I think let me look. They're going to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Last time
I'm
they played at Pittsburgh, I think, was the 2016 week 2 or 2015 week 2 game with Tom Sula with when Kaepernick threw for all those yards, had a big touchdown to Torrey Smith.
Steelers are, one of my
They
favorite
got blown
teams.
out. I think Antonio Brown probably had like 200 yards on Kenneth Acker on that game.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. Maybe it's because I was a kid of the '70s, and I was Steelers, Cowboys. Those were the teams in the '70s. I was a Niner fan, but the Niners were so bad in the '70s that I was a Steeler fan. I wore Steelers
Oh, I
socks.
see. So you're a
I
fair weather fan, Krug.
Yeah, I'm total fair weather. No, I don't know about that. You got to remember this. I was born into the Niners as a losing entity. So
Okay.
it wasn't that I was fair weather.
Me too.
I'd never experienced anything positive until I was 11 years old.
Me too. Until I was 11 years old as well, actually.
Yeah.
2011.
So
And
there
I
you
was
go.
just about to bring that up. One of my favorite games of all time was the 2011 Monday night game at Candlestick where they beat Pittsburgh 21-3. Ben played on that bum ankle.
The lights,
Alden Smith
there
was
wasn't there some kind of a light outage or
yeah,
power outage?
light out. Alden Smith was Max Start's daddy in that game. He beat him. He beat him with speed. He beat him inside. He beat him with power. I remember at that time because the Monday night broadcast was Jaws, Gruden, and Tirico. And I remember Gruden was like, "Oh, this Alden Smith, he's the best pass rusher that's ever come into San Francisco since Charles Haley walked through those doors from James Madison." I was like, "Dang, like we're just gonna go past Julian Peterson here. Okay, we're gonna go past Bryant Young." But like, I just thought that entire game was super cool. And then obviously Alden Smith playing that well, like a rookie player playing that well on in a Monday night game. It's one of my favorite 49er games, I think, ever.
Anytime the jersey games are hard to beat, when you have the teams that have those memorable jerseys.
Right.
Niners Rams is always a great looking game on TV
Yeah.
because of the colors. I love Niners Rams as well.
So if I had to answer this question, I would actually say Niners Rams. Look, my luck in terms of going to Niners games over the last 3 years has been pretty horrible. I went to the Bears game on Halloween last year, the big Debo 3rd and 15 game. That was pretty lucky. One of the only football games I've ever enjoyed in my life. No offense to my family, but that's probably because I went alone. I got a free ticket and I was able to sit like right up midfield. But Larry, I was at the way top. So I was basically watching the game on all 22 the entire game, and I was loving it. But then the other two games I've been to is I went to the game subsequent week at Levi's, the infamous Colt McCoy game from 2021. I was at that game, one of the worst watches ever. And then I had to go week 1 this year, sit in that monsoon watching Chicago beat them. That was horrible, and especially with all the hype, we expected the Bears to be one of the worst teams in football. We thought the Niners were going to steamroll them. Having to sit in that rain and watch that loss sucked. So I would love to not only see a victory, which I think the Rams at Levi's has pretty much turned into somewhat of a guarantee, but
What happened? What
Larry's
happened?
computer is too hot.
What
Dang,
happened?
Larry.
What happened? Hold on. Timeout.
Timeout.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so the camera stopped. Let me just switch.
Right. No,
cameras.
it said I had there was some words. I don't know if it popped up for everybody here, but it said internal temperature was too high there on your camera or your computer. Oh, there you are, Larry.
But I'm going from a different camera.
Right.
Oh well. There you go.
Do you think that's our cue right there? Do you have anything more you want to talk about?
Well, what else? I'm starting to feel, Vish, like we're starting to get the Niners are starting to hone in on who they like actually in the draft. And I think there's two schools to keep your eye on, and that is Louisville and Pittsburgh. Louisville has this Yaya Diaby defensive end, and they got a slot corner named Kaytrell Clark. And Pittsburgh has a running back, Anabaconda, Izzy Anabaconda, and they have a safety named Brandon Hill. And I think all four of those guys are just very high likelihood that the Niners have a lot of interest in those 4 guys.
At
So
least
look for those guys in the draft. I mean, my buddy Tony Pauline said they're really hot on the trail of Catrell Clark, and he's a tremendous slot corner with size and speed and hitting ability and physicality for Louisville. So, and then Diaby is incredible. He's a he runs 4.5. He's 260 pounds. He's got ridiculously long arms. He's got crazy college production, crazy athletic workout numbers. Brandon Hill, and a lot of these guys may be one, Diaby, they're saying round 4, round 5, Abaconda, like round 3, round 4, Brandon Hill, round 5, round 6, and Catrell Clark, round 3, round 4. So they've got a chance to, these are players that are not just good players, but they're connected to, they're looking at, and they should be on the board when they pick.
All right. I will make sure to check them out. At least now that Herm Edwards is gone from ASU, we don't have to just watch ASU players because John Lynch's buddy is coaching that team. So that's there. But no, that was a bad joke. I thought that would hit better with you, Larry.
Sorry, my camera, I think I left my camera going for too long, and it's a nice camera, but it only really goes for about 2 or 3 hours. And
it doesn't have your stamina.
Exactly. It's not a Larry Krueger camera. It's a camera that is made for somebody with no endurance.
Right. This is man, I was too slow. I was trying to give you something analogous there that would, I guess, somewhat mimic your camera not having endurance. But I will make sure to check those guys out. I actually have been doing DBs. I did corners pretty recently. I got through a lot of this corner class, the top of the draft. Like sometimes there's certain players that I look at and I'm like, oh man, I wish, the Niners had a pick near the top of the draft. And like this corner draft, when you look at Gonzalez, it's really, really good. The Maryland corner is an absolute stud.
Are you talking about which one? I mean, are you talking about Jacorian Bennett?
Banks.
Oh, Deontay Banks. Well, there's also Jacorian Bennett. Don't forget about him.
So I've been sticking to watching the players a little bit more. Like I said, to just near the top of the draft. That's just what I like watching more. But yeah, the corners near the top of the draft. Oh, the DJ Turner, the Michigan corner, stud. Devon Witherspoon, or Devin Witherspoon, or
yeah.
Devon. His film is out of this world. I now have a little bit of questions about his vertical speed. In particular, there's a few games there that when he got challenged vertically, he got run by. I've heard some people say it's a technique issue because he opens the gate late, which he does often. I don't know if he's necessarily that fast either. He hasn't run in the draft process, but on film, what a stud. What a stud. Quick trigger, quickness, quick game processing, stud player. So there's a lot of amazing corners in this draft. And I wish, I don't know if it's as good as 2017's corners when Marlon Humphrey and Lattimore and Garyon Conley and all those guys came out, but it's a damn good corner class in my opinion.
I agree. There's some big time guys, and not only that, there's some big time guys who are going to be available in the 5th round, 6th round. I mean, there's the day 3 corners in this draft are damn good.
There's a lot of height, weight, speed prospects, right?
Well, there's just a lot of small school guys. I mean, that can really play. There's a lot of good corners. There's a lot of good nickel corners. Clark Phillips from Utah, the kid from TCU, Trevius Hodges Tomlinson, Catrell Clark, Jartavius Martin from Illinois. Those are some of the nickel corners that are really impressive. And then if you go to you mentioned the guys at the very top, Christian Gonzalez, Joey Porter, Devin Witherspoon, Deontay Banks. But then you go further down that list. There's some really good players. Julius Brents from K-State. Riley Moss from Iowa. Darius Rush from South Carolina. And then even further down the list, Terrell Smith from Minnesota. Jacorian Bennett from Maryland. Corey Trice is a big corner from Purdue. Darrell Luter from South Alabama. Really like him. Rajon Wright, who he was from Last Chance U, played for Beam in the East Bay, and now is at Oregon State. I mean, there's just a bunch of guys. I mean, there really are. There's a Tyreek Jones from Boise State, really good nickel corner. So there's a lot of good players in this draft, a lot of good DBs.
I love the Julius Brent shout out.
Yeah,
I think he's one of the best
good.
corners in the draft.
Big bodied guy, kind of like the
He's Brandon
built like,
Browner.
well, or built like even like Akella Witherspoon, but just a lot
Yeah.
better, just a lot better player.
He's put together. Akella Witherspoon was a little frail coming out of college. This dude is, I think, a lot thicker, a lot bigger human being than Akella Witherspoon. He actually
6'4"
also
corner.
yeah, he actually like, because I remember there was a Vanderbilt corner a few years ago, Joe Juwan Williams, who the Patriots took. Similarly huge guy, but had ability to sink his hips and move for a big guy, just like Julius Brent, and transition. And I feel like those are two underrated qualities when we're talking about big corners, right? Because like somebody like Sauce Gardner, that's what makes him so special at 6'3", is the fact that he doesn't move like a 6'3" cornerback. And Julius Brent has those qualities. If we were talking about a guy that would bring something new, an added element to the Niners defense, he would be an awesome fit, right? Because he's got the size, length that's suited to play quarters and cover 3 and what the Niners do on the outside. But he also gives them like an available matchup player, right? If you have to play Kansas City, you can put him on Travis Kelce, right? And that's one thing I feel like we haven't talked about. I guess I don't know if we have to talk about it today, but I think one thing Jimmy Ward did give the 49ers is the ability to eliminate tight ends. Over the last 4 years, wherever he lined up, he always used to find himself on top of the tight end on third downs, and he would be able to just eliminate them in coverage. Now, it wasn't always just him, but he had that capability, and we don't know who's going to necessarily fulfill that role. I mean, when's the last tight end you can remember having a good game against the 49ers?
Exactly. I mean, I would say, well, I mean, Kelce,
In the Super Bowl, that's it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there aren't, but I mean, like in this draft, Jair Brown, Penn State, he's
Stud
probably
safety, yeah.
really good player. Antonio Johnson from A&M, really good player. J.L. Skinner, who I think tore a pectoral muscle getting ready for the draft process, from Boise, 6'4" safety. Jamie Robinson from Florida State, really, really good player. Trey Dean from Florida is a hell of a player. And there's others. I mean, further down the list. And I like Marte Mapu, but I look at him as more of a linebacker.
I like his name.
But to me, the safety that I want in this draft is
I saw you tweeted about him, by the way.
About
Mapu.
Yeah, but I like Brandon Hill from Pittsburgh. I just think I like the kind of safeties that just destroy guys. That just, that guys don't want to run across the middle because they know this guy's lurking. And
you think those guys still exist in the modern NFL?
They pretty much don't, because you got to play coverage. But that's what I love the most about this Brandon Hill from Pittsburgh is he can play man-to-man coverage, and yet he'll start you. He'll step up and into the hole, and he'll fill and he delivers with force. You know what I mean? I mean, this guy shows up and hits and separates guys from the football. So I like him a lot. I think he's a day 3 guy, probably a 5th round pick. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went for him. They've already looked at him. To me, Lynch, the one thing about Lynch is, he respects that incredible power and physicality and tone setting nature of the hard hitting safety. And I think in today's game, Vish, you got to be able to cover. But man, I mean, Lynch likes the guys that can hit, and Brandon Hill can flat out hit.
I think that's not even a Lynch thing. That seems to be a 49ers thing. Like, look at their MO and everybody they draft.
Going all the way back to Ronnie.
Right, and it doesn't matter. It's not even just safeties, Larry. Under this regime, it doesn't necessarily matter the size of the player. Every player that they draft in every position is willing to hit you in the mouth no matter what. I mean, look at the receivers. Deebo Samuel is the most physical receiver in the sport. Tight ends. Kittle's probably the most physical tight end in the sport. Offensive linemen, all those guys are very, very physical. I mean, I guess even quarterback Trey Lance played the quarterback position at a physical level, but they value toughness at the position a lot. Defensive line, linebacker, corner. I mean, that was kind of the issue with the Akella Witherspoon, right? They put a lot on their corners to replace and fill in the run game. They want them to tackle. They look for corners that can tackle. Same thing at safety as well. So that physicality is clearly something they look for across their football team.
The thing that I've loved about the way the Niners have done it the last few years is I feel like they get it. And what I mean by that is just that I really believe that the best thing you can do is just start with productive football players. You say who in this draft was good, because it's not the underwear Olympics, it's not a track meet, it's a football game. So who's a good football player? All right, then figure out of those guys who has the advanced athleticism, who's got the Bruce Feldman freaks list kind of resume. And if you can wed those two things, awesome collegiate production with high-end physical skills, man, I think that's the sweet spot, man. That's where you're trying to hit. That's when you get Jerry Rice. When you get a guy who's got all the physical ability, but he also was the best receiver. And I think they've been doing that. They're not taking a lot of these workout warriors. They take guys who are productive college football players. I mean, even Brock Purdy. I mean, Brock Purdy was a productive college football player, and he had enough physicality. But what I'm saying is, if you can marry that, like this Yaya Diaby from Louisville, he runs 4.5, and yet he had great production in for Louisville as an edge rusher.
In fact, you could argue that all the first round picks that have gone wrong for them are the guys that have only 1 year of production, right? Solomon Thomas really only came on his junior year at Stanford. He had 8.5 sacks. He was awesome the entire year, and he capped it off with that Sun Bowl performance against North Carolina. And then he had a great draft process where he tested out of this world athletically and physically, but he only had 1 year of production, right? Javon Kinlaw only really had 1 year of production at South Carolina. Now, he had 2 awesome games against Alabama and Georgia, but he really only had 1 year of production, and then he blew him away because he was the best player on the Senior Bowl at the Senior Bowl. I remember watching the one-on-ones that year at the Senior Bowl and seeing what he did to Lloyd Cushenberry, who was drafted in the 3rd round and all of that. I was like, holy cow. So that's there. And then, of course, there's Trey Lance. Now, the jury's still out on Trey Lance, but right now I would say he's a disappointment. And not really because of his fault, just because the pick hasn't necessarily given them the rewards that they expected it to when they traded all that up to get him. And we're 2 years into his career. And he only had 1 year of production. And he was also another guy that physically had all the traits and everything, but only 1 year of production. So it's an interesting distinction that you bring up. And I think probably opens the can of worms for another deeper conversation, which maybe we continue tomorrow on the Coop Show. What do you think?
And I'll say this, I really think they're going quarterback in this draft at some point. And the two guys that I'm pretty convinced they're gonna be looking for on day 3, if they're there, Max Duggan from TCU, who
Stetson Bennett.
Well, I think it's more like DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Dorian Thompson-Robinson played 5 full years. So he's got athletic ability, but he also has 47 or 50 career starts.
And I think DTR is kind of falling a little bit the way Brock Purdy did last year, in the sense that he had so much hype so early into his college career. It felt like everything he did after was disappointing. Therefore, despite being a productive player now, I think he's a better prospect. I'm not going to lie. I did not think greatly of Purdy when he was coming out of the draft. I think pretty greatly of DTR. I saw Chris Sims had him as the 5th ranked quarterback in the draft. I'm not sure if I would go that far and agree with it, but I really like the player. But yeah, if we're talking about in that range, we're talking about a player who has real starting traits, right? He has an NFL arm and then some, and then he's an NFL athlete and then some, and then he actually plays the quarterback position pretty well. He's quite accurate, short to intermediate. His deep ball, his passing down the field has to improve, but the 49ers don't seem to be too hell-bent on having quarterbacks that really throw, 18-yard outs and stuff like that with consistency. And he's got the arm to be able to do that at some point. But, yeah, if they were able to snag him 5th, 6th, 7th round, it doesn't matter who's on this roster. I'd be very, very happy because you can never have enough quarterbacks. Bill Walsh always used to say you draft one in every draft, and it just gives you better. I mean, look at Philadelphia, right? They were able to transition despite making the Carson Wentz mistake so quickly because they took Jalen Hurts at a time that nobody thought they should take Jalen Hurts in the second round. So
Look at the
it behooves you.
Commanders or the
Yeah,
Redskins before when they took Kirk Cousins after they had taken
right.
RG3. I mean, where would the Niners be if they hadn't taken
And
Brock?
Brock Purdy,
So,
right.
I mean, I agree. I mean, especially with some of the, especially at a position like quarterback where it's not about height, weight, speed. It's about how well do you process and play the position and how accurate. It's a bunch of factors. And it's like, you know what? I don't want a 1 year starter like a Mitchell Trubisky, right? He was a 1 year starter. Um, I want somebody who's played a while. And I'd like, to iron out their rough spots and
Well,
also to see a bunch of different coverages. And then I want somebody who's athletic. To me, when you look at how fast the defenders are in the league right now, every quarterback I think coming into the league is got to be able to move, and then you got to be really smart. You got to be able to move, and you got to have had success and experience in college, and that's why I think Duggan and DTR. I mean, there'll be other guys, Jake Hayner and Tanner McKee, and I kind of like Malik Cunningham, to be honest. But as far as when push comes to shove, I think if you're really checking all the boxes, DTR and the kid from TCU, Duggan, I think could very well be their quarterback selection on day 3 in this draft.
you know, before we kind of sign off here, you know what all of this talk reminded me of?
What's
It
that?
reminded me of the Bill Parcells quarterback draft rules. You remember 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, has to start 30 games, must have been a team captain, 3-year starter. I think one is you had to win 23 of your 30 starts or something like that. Had to have like a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. He had a bunch of different rules. I'm not sure if I named all of them, but those are the ones I remember off the top of my head. Do you remember those?
Yeah. He
Do you
believes
remember?
strongly in the experience factor.
Right,
Uh,
right. Do you remember
I will
when?
say this though, the absolutes, Vish, it's like if you're really going to be good at what you do, you got to look at every person as a person, and you can't look at them like a trend
So,
because you're going to
Sean
miss if
Payton talked about
if
this
you
with
have
Parcells.
rules, you know what I mean? Too many rules are bad.
Sean Payton talked about this actually earlier this year with Parcells' philosophy. It wasn't that Parcells was unopposed to outliers. You just had to convince him why there was an outlier, right? Parcells, who famously loves big corners, took Aaron Glenn, I think, in the top 10, who's 5'9".
And he was great.
Right. And so, like, you just have to explain to him why you make that exception. But either way, why I was reminded of that, Larry, was just all of this talk about like the draft rules, what the 49ers would do, was just reminding me of those rules. And then it reminded me of when everybody thought that Balky was going to draft Connor Cook in the 2015 draft. And then he ultimately ended up taking like Jeff Driscoll in the 6th round, and they went with Blaine Gabbert and Colin Kaepernick, which surprised everybody. But everybody thought that he was going to take Connor Cook because Connor Cook checked all of the Parcells boxes. And,
He went to
Balky
the
was
Raiders,
a
right?
Parcells guy. Yeah. He went to the Raiders. I think he
He was a
washed out
stiff.
very
Oh yeah,
quickly.
he
Yeah.
washed. Remember that one? He had a playoff start. I think he sucked in the playoffs.
Yeah. When Derek Carr broke his leg, I think, yeah, McGloin got hurt and he had to end up playing. It was terrible. I did want to pull this up before we go. Vok29, I thought this was hilarious. Purdy is taking HGH right now, so he'll be 6 foot with an 80-yard cannon next year.
Well, it's funny. There are people that are like, Purdy can't get any better. What? Why? Because you said so? He's going to get better. It's just a matter of, is he going to be diminished from the injury? If he's diminished from the injury, then that obviously is a deal unto itself. But
Yeah.
everybody gets better.
I think
without injuries.
I think what they are, Larry, I think it's a better way to explain this. So I don't think they doubt whether the player can get better or not, because none of us know what the growth capacity of a player is, right? Like, we see the talent of a Trey Lance and we think, okay, that means higher ceiling, but what part of his ceiling is actually attainable? That's a question none of us can answer. What part of Purdy's ceiling, whatever that is attainable? That's also a question none of us can answer. If Purdy is capable of reaching 100% of his ceiling and Trey Lance is capable of reaching only 20% of his ceiling, then Purdy has a higher ceiling than Trey Lance. We just don't know what percentage of their ceiling they're capable of reaching. The thing I think what people say when they think Purdy's improvement can be is I think there's a specific archetype of quarterback that Brock Purdy has to fall into. And I think people are skeptical of quarterbacks getting enough reps to become the high level processors that play with great timing and anticipation consistently. I think people are skeptical of that style of quarterback in general in the NFL today. And I think that just falls back on Brock Purdy. Now, where I push back is I don't think we even need to make those type of claims about Purdy because until he becomes off of his rookie contract, he's going to be playing with stud people around him and he's going to be playing in a great system. So all he really has to do is execute and play fast and play faster and play more on time than he did last year because at times last year he got a little bit enamored with playing off schedule or sometimes passing up some available throws and not being as aggressive as he was at the beginning of the year. So that's there. But I mean, those are all basic improvements that go with quarterbacks playing more. It's just such an interesting conversation because it's way more layered, it's way more nuanced, but everybody just likes throwing out very, very conclusive claims about these kinds
Absolutes
of
and that kind of thing.
things.
But
Yeah,
here's the bottom line on this thing is we tell ourselves, and we know it's the wrong thing to do, but we tell ourselves over and over again, don't judge the book by the cover. How
right.
many
But we
times
do it
have
all
you
the
heard
time.
people and we do it all the time. We judge
Yeah.
people based on how they look, how they carry themselves. If Brock Purdy were super athletic and he was 6'7" and he ran fast, there'd be people claiming he's going to be the greatest thing ever. But because
I'll
he's
say
6
this. I
feet
don't
and
even think he
change
needs
and
to
kind
be
of
that, Larry.
stocky, it's like, no, he doesn't look like we want him to look. And so all of a sudden it's like, you know what? He probably can't do it. But we're,
Uh-huh.
we're judging the book by its cover. And it's like anything else. One of the things I used to be a bank teller, Vish. I'll give you this
Uh-huh.
little nugget before I leave. I was a bank teller at Wells
Okay.
Fargo in college, right?
Really? Okay. I did
Yeah.
not know this. This is interesting.
Yeah. So I walked into a
Story time
bank.
with Krug.
I walked into a bank by Sac State, and there was just, three of the most beautiful girls of all time, just like sitting there as tellers. And the girl says to me, we're taking applications for tellers. And I'm like, never wanted to be a teller, hate math, don't want to just sit there and do that at all. But, because I was 19 and, whatever, I was enamored with her. I'm just like, I'm going to apply. I'm going to
So you
apply.
took the job because of the girl.
I took the job because of the girl. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
now I'm a bank teller, and
Okay.
being a bank teller,
How did it work out with the girl, by the way?
good. It worked out good.
Okay.
Very good. But being a bank teller was such an education because guys, somebody would walk in, they're wearing $1,000 suit. They've got a Breitling watch. They've got jewelry, rings, looking sharp. Run their card, they're negative $3.50 average balance in their account for the year, right?
Right.
Somebody else walks in, they look like they sleep under an underpass. They smell like the worst BO you could ever possibly imagine. They look like the kind of person that literally would be asking you for change. You run their card, they've got $329,000 in their checking account and
Is this
another
true?
$750,000 in their savings account. So it just was a reminder to me that do not judge the book by the cover. We think we know everything. We think we see people for what they are. We don't. We're fascinated by the way people dress, the way they talk, the way they look, how their hygiene and everything else. And we make these evaluations about people. And not that your money and how much money you have defines you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that people that look rich sometimes are poor. People that are poor sometimes are rich. People that are, sound dumb or sometimes educated. People that sound educated or sometimes dumb. It's don't judge the book by the cover.
All right. Yeah, right is asking if she's your wife now.
No. No. She's
Oh,
not.
okay. So we'll stop asking about that.
That's why I was very, very short answers, short declarative answers.
Okay. The one thing I will say to add to your thing is I don't even think if Purdy's size or height or anything changed. If he was the same exact player, but he was just drafted in the first round for whatever reason, the skills that made Purdy successful last year, the foot quickness, the anticipation, the timing, the accuracy, those things were valued to the point where they thought that, he was such a precocious talent at those things that, you could overcome some of the issues with size and arm talent. And let's say he was a first round pick. I think a lot of people would look at his skill set very, very differently and his ceiling differently. I think part of it that plays into it is the draft process. And maybe a lot of people not underestimating how good he really was at Iowa State. I certainly didn't think he was anywhere near as good at Iowa State as he played. And so that's, I think, a part of it. Andre Rodriguez is donating just to say hello to Larry Krueger. He says, by the way, Andre, we really appreciate it. But he says, Larry, respect to you, sir. Saw you with Ryan, Jesse, Grant. Way to hold your beliefs under hate/criticism. I hate others who switch up on their shows.
There you go. Fist in the air. There you go.
Fist up in the air in solidarity.
There you go. Thank you, Andre. Appreciate
AJ,
you,
I
brother.
think AJ has the right comment here. He says, let's get Vish to 8K. Yeah, thank
Where
you.
are we? Where are you, Vish?
8K. I don't know. I think we're close, though. And he's already congratulating me in advance, which means a lot. Thank you for the congratulations. Oh, my God, we're at 7,983. Please do get me to 8K. Would mean a lot. 8,000 people, that's a lot of people. It would mean a lot. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're liking this video. I don't know how many likes we're at, but 145 people are in here. Let's try to get to 100 likes. Come on, guys. Smack that like button. Make sure you're subscribing to the Krug Show. I may or may not be on the Krug Show tomorrow. Krug will have to, take some time, decompress, see if we're capable of doing the back-to-back. I think we are, but Krug
We
might
can
need
always
the
do it.
Kawhi
We can always
Leonard.
turn it around.
Krug might need the Kawhi Leonard load management here. And he might not be able to do the – no, I'm messing. But make sure you're subscribed to the Krug Show. And I'm sorry, the Pig in the Pickle Krug Show.
The Pig in the Pickle Krug Show.
By the way, Pig in the Pickle, if you ever watch me and Krug, I've shouted you guys out way too many times to not make this the Pig in the Pickle Vish Kumaran show. So, no, I'm playing. But come on, 43 likes, guys. Come on, 57 more to go.
Come on, man. Like it.
Man. Yeah, like it. No, I really appreciate the support, everybody. It's been awesome to be back on YouTube. I've been here for almost, 8 months again. I've had a great time streaming with Larry, streaming with Ryan, Jesse, all the different people. It's been awesome. And I couldn't have done it without the support that you guys provide every day. I really do appreciate it. Krug and I will be back next time on Tuesday on this show. We won't be back on Wednesday. That was just a one-time thing. So make sure to tune in Tuesday, probably 6:45 Pacific, 8:45 Central. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you next time.